now I would like to move things along to our panel discussion. And for those purposes, I would like to ask Dicky and Albert and Skui-san and also Mr. Buna to please kindly put on your cameras so we can see your faces.
Hello, Albert.
Hello, everybody. And Mr. Buna, can you also put on your camera as well? All right, thank you so much. Okay, and yes, we have 4 panelists for our panel discussion today. And just to highlight for the panelists and the audience, we're going to give each one of you 2 questions. We'll start with question 1 and go around, and then we'll go with a second round of questions. And the order will go Albert and Mr. Buna, and then we will go to Skui-san and Dicky-san. And so I'd like to start off with our colleague Albert Magalang. And Albert is the Chief of Climate Change Service at the Department of Environment and Natural Resources in the Philippines. And he has worked on these climate issues and co-benefits also for a number of years. And Albert, my first question for you is, can you describe some of the efforts that the Philippines has made to assess and recognize the sustainable development impacts of their climate projects? And Albert, if you could work on this question for about 2 minutes or so, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much, Eric. So a pleasant afternoon to our colleagues. So it's so nice to see you once again in a safe condition, and also we're just recuperating from from the hard negotiations that we had in Glasgow. So it's good that it's a good news, as mentioned by BK, that we had already the rule book and everything. Everybody seems to be rejoicing because at last, after 5 years or 6 years or so, we had completed the negotiations on the rule book. Okay, thank you, Eric, for giving me this opportunity, and also to provide questions on to provide answers to the questions that you have presented, that will somehow give elaboration on how the DNAs or countries are implementing co-benefits and also the SD benefits. So as regards to the first question, as regarding assessment and recognition of SD impacts, we are as a DNA, we still working on looking at or engaging or practicing or applying the CDM SD benefits, or through the SDBD or the SD document that we required from project proponents or project developers, project proponents like CDM project proponents, like, for example, looking at the evaluation criteria that we have developed nationally. This would really look at the 3 dimensions: the economic dimension, environmental dimension, and social dimension. In fact, we're also applying this to the existing climate projects that we have. So this is always the dimensions I've mentioned will always be considered in assessing the meaningful impacts of climate change projects like CDM or like JCM. So of course, if you have to look at the economic dimension, there's always the provision of measurable units like livelihood and other economic opportunities for the community, especially, and also some safety nets and compensatory measures for affected stakeholders of the project, and also what are the new financial resources that could be delivered by the project in terms of, in terms of offering this to the affected communities or stakeholders. And on the environmental aspect, we have, of course, we really have to look at the compliance with environmental policies and standards. Dicky has already mentioned some of the parameters or the indicators as regards to environmental policies and standards, and also how to improve local environment, like for example, air, water, soil quality of the community, and also the promotion of sustainable use of natural resources. And lastly, on the social aspects, of course, there's always the the provision to look at the education and training, which would build the capabilities or capacities of local stakeholders, and also the provision of services and local resources to vulnerable groups, and also the promotion of the local participation in projects, especially in the conduct of the stakeholders consultation. So these are the general as the criteria that we have, and of course these are not enough, although these are nationally determined, but there's always a problem on quantification. Karen has already mentioned that comparing with other mechanisms and stakeholders mechanism, there's always I noticed that in the table that Karen has presented, there's the absence in most of the tools as regards to the quantification. So it's really a challenge. And what is this really is, of course, we really have to look at the guidance and tools and methods that are available that can quantify co-benefits and their applications. I think IGS has a very good, white paper on this, which also would like to make use of, and especially on the application of the long-range energy alternatives planning systems, or an which would also give us an integrated benefits calculator, or the LEAP IBC, which a model that can estimate the impacts of different policy scenarios. This is the only tool that we have worked on, or wherein we had the capacity building, because Eric, we have this initiative at the ASEAN level with ASEAN countries, like I'm referring to the project or the initiative on advancing ASEAN initiatives on clean air, health, and climate, wherein we have the support from, since its inception, we have the support from the Institute of Global Environmental Strategies, or IGS, the Stockholm Environmental Institute, as well as the International Institute for Applied System Analysis. So it's really good to be exposed, or to have acquired some skills on how to use this tool. But of course, we're open to also look at other tools as in terms of quantifying co-benefits, as well as sustainable development benefits. So as we have discussed at the ASEAN level, as I mentioned, this is an engagement by the Philippines together with the ASEAN member states. I think Eric would agree with me, because in the last meeting of the ASEAN member states, we have presented that and there's what could be the additional or further needs that we would like to acquire, is the use of the user-centered tools and analysis tools like the LEAP IBC. Also, how to have the tools that would address policy integration and transparency, like for example, integrating air pollution, short-lived climate pollutants, co-benefits into the NDCs. So we need MRV systems in the light of revisions in order to have the transparency framework, as we have already, as the new rule book will provide. And lastly, the multi-benefit solutions, Eric, if you remember this. So we have to adapt to priority solutions. Like, for example, in order to avoid production or generation of short-lived climate pollutants, like through open burning, pit burning, or clean cooking. Or you have to have clean cooking procedure methods, and also avoid waste burning. So that's all, Eric, for the moment, and I would be glad to be back on some questions that our colleagues may raise. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Albert. Really appreciate the comments. I'm going to ask if people have additional questions for Albert, please put them into the chat box. And we're only going to go with one question for the panel discussion because we are running a little short on time. And now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Boon, who is coming to us today from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment for Lao PDR. And Buna, the question also is the same for you. Can you describe some of the efforts that Lao PDR has made to assess and recognize sustainable development impacts of their climate projects? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Elix, and good afternoon, everyone. And based on your question, and right now there is an existing ODA monitoring scheme that honor the development project, particularly ODA project that have to register to this system. It means that the system is designed to monitor and assess the project activity that the development project can contribute, how much can contribute to sustainable development goal in Laos. And also right now, regarding with for the climate finance tracking system. Also, there is a collaboration project with UNEP. We try to integrate the climate finance receipt tracking system into the ODA system. Since the main purpose of this activity is to track the climate finance project, particularly the project activity that can contribute to mitigate the GHG emission, as well as to build the resilient for community to adapt to the climate impacts. And regarding to the JCM scheme, I think now the MRV system was also developed similar to the Indonesia case, because it maybe I think the scheme is developed quite the same. And each year we also there is an annual meeting to report and discuss on the progress of the JCM project that proposed year by year from both sides, the developer from Laos side and Japanese side as well. But for the CTM activity, right now we don't have any concrete MRV system yet. So in the future, this is a challenge for us to monitor and assess how the CTM activity contribute to sustainable development in Laos. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Buna, and thanks for highlighting, some of the work that you're doing to integrate some of climate finance with ODA, and also highlighting some possible opportunities to learn from some of the experiences of other countries here. We've worked with you on the past on some of the gender impacts of climate change, and I think that's also an area that's open for some good opportunities moving forward. Now I would like to turn the questions over to my colleague from IGES, Ms. Akibi Skui, who is working on our climate and energy team on joint crediting mechanism projects. And Skui-san, my question for you is, can you describe some of the efforts that IGES and collaborators have made to assess and recognize the SD impacts of JCM projects?
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for inviting me to this webinar. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much,
Okay, thank you.
Skui-san.
Yes, it is my pleasure to share some experiences that I have learned through the JCM implementation. And I think most of you are familiar with the JCM, but let me just briefly touch upon the concept of the joint crediting mechanism as well as IG's role in the JCM. So the JCM is a bilateral approach between Japan and 17 partner countries, and the JCM is operated under Article 6.2, aiming to reduce GHG emissions by diffusing low carbon and decarbonization technologies, at the same time contribute to sustainable development in the partner countries. And IGES, our institute, has been supporting the implementation of the mechanisms, focusing on methodology development, capacity building, training, and promoting sustainable development. As Albert touched upon, IGES has been done some analysis on analysis related to SDGs in JCM. So our starting point was to understand the links between the JCM and SDGs. To analyze its link, we have developed JCM unique qualitative and quantitative indicators, which enables us to assess the scheme and project. So the results of our analysis show that the JCM in SDG goals, not only in energy, environment, and economic goals, but also the social dimension of SDGs. And the JCM project can contribute to more than one goal, depending on what technology is installed into which sector. For example, installing solar PV in agriculture sector can contribute to goal 7 and 2 at the same time. Therefore, understanding the host country's needs and how to combine technologies and sectors are key to designing projects. And our research successfully broadened the discussion on sustainable development to various stakeholders and increases awareness of the SDGs in the JCM. The analysis allows the partner countries to see potential sectors and technologies to enhance their SDG achievement in their countries. And also the private sector can get tips to integrate the JCM with their business strategies. So our next step is to support project participants in designing JCM projects to link with the SDGs in their early stages in order to maximize the potential of the JCM project in the partner countries. That's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Skui-san, for this very useful overview of the work that you and colleagues have done in terms of identifying indicators. And then I think this really important point that you raised about linking early on in the policy-making process or decision-making process also relates to the point that was raised by VK. The earlier that we do this, the better the project is likely to come out and the more development impacts it will deliver. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Dicky-san. Dicky, I just want you to elaborate a little bit upon Indonesia's ability or how it could contribute to the growing interest under Article 6 to use tools to assess co-benefits of climate projects. I think your presentation really showed the progress and experience there. But how can we link this back to some of the openings that Karen raised at the very beginning of our webinar? Dicky, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eric. Yeah, the thing about all of the decision on the Article 6 is there is no clear guidance. There is no clear standards on how then we can fulfill it. For example, there are a lot of words about the environmental integrity, and there are also sustainable development. But if you notice, no words that explain what is sustainable development and what is environmental integrity. And this is the tricky thing about the negotiation. Sometimes they put some words that nobody can understand. Only maybe people like Dr. Eric Zuman or maybe Dr. Albert Magalang that I understand what is the environmental integrity. But if these terms then implemented to the business people or to the business sector, it will not work. So we need guidance, we need then guidelines, and then we need example on this. On regarding the Article 6, particularly the 6.2, the ITMOS. So for example, like the GCM then have all of the criteria of the ITMOS. So if we talk about the ITMOS, the Japanese delegates like Supi-san and then Kentaro-san always give example of the GCM. And then if they ask about what is the GCM, what is the correlation between the GCM and the sustainable development, and then they show the case of the Indonesia GCM case, and then the Mongolia GCM case that we have developed. The sustainable development implementation plan and sustainable development implementation report in this. What we have achieved in here compared to the CDM and compared to the current situation, then we can have a review and then we can have analysis that at least if we want to achieve the sustainable development, it can only be in one step review, just like what I have shown you in the CDM case. At the CDM, we don't have any national standard and guidelines. We have only what we call the CDM Secretariat regulation.
Dickie, I'm gonna have to. I'm very sorry. We're running short on time. So can you give a last 10-second wrap up, and then unfortunately we're gonna have to end the meeting a little bit early. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I mean that everything. If we want to develop the CD, the SD in the carbon project, so we must at least develop it in the 2 steps. So we must develop it at the ex ante and then ex post. It is at least that we must have in every carbon projects, and it can be implemented not only in Indonesia.
Thank you so much. I think that's a really useful way to summarize what we need to do in terms of this ex ante and ex post evaluation, and the Indonesian experience is quite relevant and fills in an obvious gap that an opening that Karen highlighted at the very beginning of our workshop. I think for today, we're going to have to stop there because of some timing constraints, but we deeply appreciate everybody's participation. And we now have a good group of people that can consult on possible guidelines, as Dickie outlined, that would potentially inform the Paris rulebook. So we look forward to subsequent webinars, and we thank you so much once again for your kind participation. Please feel free to email any of the participants with follow-up